Hey, what is up, everyone? Welcome to Market Psychology 101, where we look for value when there's fear and are cautious when there's greed. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the Bitcoin rainbow chart, Bitcoin price action, a bunch of other indicators, seeing where Bitcoin might be going from here. So let's get into it, and let's start off with crypto fear and greed. And of course, after we have just completed somewhere near a 30% sell-off from the most recent top, we are in extreme fear. And remember what I said, we want to look for value and opportunities when there's fear. We have extreme fear now, so I do think there is some better opportunities for deeper value. We will see if there's some levels to go higher or lower and where we might be going from here. But we are in extreme fear. These are very rare times. If you look within the last year, this is the lowest we've ever been as far as fear. And we are still in this downtrend of greed to fear. You can see lower lows, lower highs. But as we're completing this downtrend, we want to look to see when this flips. So right now, no denying, we are in a downtrend here, but going down rather sharply. Hopefully, we start to see a bounce pretty soon, and then we can kind of flip our minds from where we are as far as extreme fear and possibly going lower into opportunities and looking to go higher. But I do think we are in good dollar cost average territory. As far as the alt season index, you can see we're still relatively low and chopping sideways. And to me, this is promising. We have been talking about this, how we have been in this uptrend, but in this minor time frame we have been going down a bit. So as long as this settles out right here, I think that is rather good for the alts, that hopefully they don't bleed too much further and that we can find a base here pretty soon. Of course, here we are on the rainbow chart, and you can see just a little bit that it is starting to dip down once again into this accumulate range. So pretty good value for Bitcoin as far as the rainbow chart goes. One of you has put in my comments of these videos a few times talking about the power law. And by the way, this is another thing you guys can check out. To me, this reminds me a lot of the Bitcoin rainbow chart. So you're going to focus on the rainbow chart, but I do like this, and I think it just confirms a lot of what we're looking at. You can see as the lines kind of start squeezing together over time, that to me kind of symbolizes the diminishing returns, and this is on a log scale as well. So thank you for bringing that up. I think this is another tool to just look at and see for you guys if you like that more or not than the rainbow chart. But as far as the rainbow chart goes, I do like how this is showing, kind of like the power law chart right there, that we are into areas where we do have deeper value. And maybe we get to the lower end of this accumulate range, which would be, that's that third box from the bottom, between 44 to 57K. We'll take a look at the charts and see why that might be possible. And let's start by looking at the charts. So something I wanted to do before I started this video is go back and see how many times have we had movements like this. Now, this didn't take long. It only lasted for about a week, but you can see that within a week from the high, or after that, a little longer than a week, we went down 30%. Now, these other corrections that we've had from local tops to bottoms have been more in the low to mid 20%. So you can see right there, that was 25% here, 20% here. We had, of course, I believe that was the ETF approval spike, 20% there. We can keep going back. This cycle has been about the low to mid 20% as far as corrections. Most recently, this has been a 30% correction. Now, but before I go back, something I do want you guys to notice here is we've drawn this channel out before, touching the highs and the lows. People are calling this a bull flag, sure. But right now, you can see we've settled at the lower end of the channel. And not just that, but Bitcoin price wicked and bounced pretty nicely off the 786 macro fib. When we are between the prior high and low, and we have this fib drawn out, and I know we went above it, but on the Heikin-Ashi, it's really just been candle wicks, not full candle bodies. We haven't quite had confirmation that we are breaking all-time highs, at least with the candle bodies yet. But when we go from the prior high to low on the fib, you can see that 786, that's about what we got to. And also, we stayed above, candle body-wise on the weekly, above the 50. This is the orange line, the 50-week moving average. And in my opinion, for most assets, when you take a look at the 50-week moving average, that's that orange line, when you stay above with the candle body, and I don't even mind if the candle body's on it either, but when you're staying with it or above, you're still technically bullish in my opinion. So we're just coming down to deep value areas, and the market's making a decision. Are we going to flip bearish or bullish? Right now, that decision tells me that there is a lot of buyers here. You see the strong wick off the 786, off the 50-week moving average. The candle body staying above the lower end of the channel. So that's telling me there's a lot of support here. And this may be a great opportunity for deeper value. Now, going back, let's talk about the 30% correction and the 50. You can see here, speaking of the 50, when Bitcoin got to it, it bounced in 2021. And when it finally got under, then it turned bearish. You can see this with other charts too. I haven't even double checked this, but let's look at NVIDIA. Case in point, had a bounce, but once it got under, it was bearish. Once it got above, it's been bullish. So case in point right there. And yes, there can be some fake outs, but again, that's why we take a look at the candle bodies. Is it closing completely? No, this is just a wick and it continued higher. Here, when it was closing underneath, you can see we continue to lower. So I know Bitcoin is more volatile, but I think over time it's going to do things like some of the major stocks do, especially because its valuation is so high. But I wanted to go back to 2019 because there's a lot of similarities going on between now and 2019. And something to consider, this orange line right here, we talked about this in the last video because last week the Fed made a decision to continue to pause rates for now. Now in 2019, we had this mid-cycle top. We were ripping up really fast. This only took like half a year from Bitcoin to go from around 3,500 up to 14,000. And then right before the Fed cut rates, or right after, sorry, Bitcoin started to bleed down. And as it did, and you guys may have heard that the Fed is pretty much, or people are saying the Fed is pretty much guaranteed to cut rates in September. And that you can see is similar to what we're going through now with the rate cut narrative as well. But you can see these red circles that I drew. These are all 30% corrections from the high to the low. I may have to zoom in here on the daily to show you that. So you see this red circle, high to low. That is a 30% correction. First one this cycle. Let's go back to the 2019 area. And you can see we had 4 of those back here. High to low, 30%. High to low, 30%. Can you guys imagine, like right after the peak, ripping down 30%? Now here, it had a good bounce off its macro fib. Okay, so high, low, 30%, but it kept chopping sideways. And if you're wanting to look for what's most similar to what we experience right now, I would say it's most similar to this move right here. And the reason why is the moving average. You can see that this got under the 200-day moving average and then eventually got back to it. A little bit of a rejection, went lower, and then broke through. But then later, man, it bled even further and got down to the next fib line. So if we did something like this, and let's just assume or play with the idea, if you will, that these fib lines are the other ones that we have right now, that we're going to test the 200-day moving average and what would happen if we went lower. Well, if we go to today, you can see again, we had this 30% move and the 200-day moving average, this dark blue line, is now resistance. So if Bitcoin gets to this area, and you can see it's around 59,000, I'm really curious to see what it'll do. Is there going to be a little bit of a rejection and come back down to here before bouncing off the channel and getting back up to this trend line in the upper end of the channel, sure, I could see it, but we may encounter some resistance and go lower. If we did, a couple areas that I've been looking for as possible macro areas of support. And we have all this price action back here. We have this 618 fib. This is the high 30,000s, the mid 40,000s. So this is around 44,000 right here and 38, 39K. Guys, in my opinion, this would be worst case scenario if this happens. I'm not saying it's going to, but if that were to happen, then you can see, let's actually move over to the weekly. You can see right there, the weekly, that's around the area of the 100-week moving average. Now, we talked about this in the rainbow chart not long ago, that the accumulate zone, at least as far as right now, the area is between 44 and 58K. We're dipping into that area of the rainbow chart. So if we get to that 44K area, well, this is that price action over here, as well as the 100-week moving average. Now, I keep going back and forth between now and 2019 because the rate cut narrative, the 30% drops. And by the way, I'm not including this area right here because this was the COVID crash, the Black Swan event, and we have 4 other data points to look at to kind of compare what happened last time. But guys, you can see on the weekly, if we take the COVID crash out of it, if we take that whole narrative, Black Swan event aside, you can see where did Bitcoin settle? It settled first at the 50-week and then at the 100-week moving average before eventually moving sideways and up. Now, are we going to spend from the rate cut to the next break about, you guys see that, 511 days? Are we going to spend a year to a year and a half going sideways before we go up? Maybe, or maybe not. We may only spend a little bit of time. We'll see. You never know. It depends how bad the market's going to get in the near future. Something you guys should be watching my stock videos as well. And we've been talking about the yield curve inversion. I'm just going to do a quick plug for that. How we're getting close to uninverting. And when we do, there's usually recessions that fall. So do subscribe so you get some of that content. You do want to know what's going on in the stock market and how that influences the crypto market. But here's the TLDR, or the short of the long for that. After yield curve on inversion, which is usually around rate cuts, there's typically around 3 to 4 months until we see if the markets are going to continue being bullish or bearish. And so, in my opinion, we have a 3 to 4 month window after rate cuts. That's typically the average. Okay, things can always be different. But let's say they cut rates in September. There's no emergency Fed meetings or anything like that, nor should there be, in my opinion. But let's say they cut rates in September. Well, that would lead us to October, November, December, maybe January. And so we've been talking about how the end of December is kind of one of our key areas to watch, because the average amount of time from the new all-time high, which is this yellow line, to the next peak in the cycle is around 300 days. That's later this December. So that fits within the average of what crypto has done before. You guys see these white and yellow lines, right? The white lines are the halvings. The yellow lines is when Bitcoin is broke its prior all-time high and how long it took to get to the next peak, the red lines. Okay, the halving has always come before the break of the prior cycle top until recently. And when we take that average of how long it takes from the new break of the all-time high to the next peak, it's around 300 days, December 2024, when we typically have around 3 to 4 months after rate cuts until we see whether things continue bullish or bearish. Maybe we're going to get an early top. And if we are going to get a recession, a bad one that plays out in 25 and 26, we may go up until that time before falling off. Now, that is my guess. One thing on this channel, I like to remind all you guys of, and especially myself, is we can't get into the prediction game too much. We have to take what the charts are giving us because each time the markets do something a little bit different. And so, again, we've had this major sell-off, 30%. And looking at your wallets, it sucks. You feel that sad emotion. But you take a deep breath and you use your brain and you remember, what have we been talking about here at Market Psychology 101? We've been talking about looking for opportunities when there's fear. This is the most fear we've had in a while, since later 22 when the market was at the bottom. Could we go lower? Sure, of course we could. But what are the facts right now of what the market is giving us? Is that it sold off pretty huge, but then it's finding support. It's finding a bottom. And I don't care if we go down to the 100-week moving average and the price action down here. What I do care about is the value we have. I wasn't buying the top or the top of the channel, but now that we're at the lower end of the channel and we are at the 50-week moving average and this lower end of the fib, yes, we're above here right now. I think that's deeper value for many cryptos. You can take a look at a number of them. I think that's deeper value. That is what the market's showing us. So if you liked it up here, you need to love it down here. Now, if you're looking at this not from a trader perspective, and I don't claim to be a trader, I'm more of a trade investor when it comes to crypto. At the very least, what you could wait for is just confirmation with a green candle and with a buy-sell signal indicator. Now, there's two that I use for buy-sell signal indicators. The green-red dot one is this one, the 1020 MA crossover. There's another one that is more of a confirming indicator. It's called UT bot alerts. So you can use one or the other for that. Right now on the daily, we don't have confirmation. Now, something important to know is that on the daily, if or when we do get confirmation, if that's what you're waiting for, and I don't zoom in on lower time frames because I think, oftentimes that can fake you out a little bit, is that you can wait for there to be a green buy signal on the daily, but it might be higher. You might be getting price when it's maybe 10, 15% above the bottom. And the reason you wait for confirmation is because, one, you don't want to catch a falling knife. You could have been buying on the lower time frame somewhere in here before things went lower. Let's actually do that. Let's go to the 2-hour time frame. If you zoom in on these time frames and you're waiting for buy signals, you can see some of these green dots in here. If you're buying the lower time frame and you say, hey, things are going up, you can get smacked right back down again. Okay, so lower time frame, it's got to see, at least on this 2-hour time frame, it's got to get above this. But last time it did, boom, it got smacked down. Maybe that's going to happen again. So at least on more of the macro time frames, you get more of a confirmation. The other thing that we wanted to take a look at here, indicator-wise, to see if we are finding a bottom is the relative strength index. Anytime we're getting very overbought or oversold, this is one of the best indicators you can use, and this is why. You can see right here, this is actually pretty promising. Do you see how, sorry, we have these guys over here. You see how the RSI was even lower when the price was higher? When the price goes lower, but the RSI is going higher, and it is going higher here from the oversold dips, that is called bullish divergence. That is a great thing to see. Now, we don't know when that trend is going to reverse, but that is showing that we are getting strength in the other direction. That is at least on the daily. Now, the opposite, by the way, if you're wondering what bearish divergence would be, that would be the opposite. That would be if the price is going higher, but the RSI is going down. Okay, here the RSI went down and the price went down. Okay, RSI went down. So there wasn't bearish divergence there, at least on the daily. On the weekly, On the weekly, do we have that? It's still just bearish. On the weekly, you might take a look at this and say, well, this could continue lower. It hasn't found a base yet. That did happen in here as well when Bitcoin was going sideways. Went down to the 200-week moving average before bouncing up, but it only got under 50. So hedge your bets, put your money where your mouth is. In my opinion, just taking what the market's given us, we have deep value here. We're at the lower end of this channel, which we've been staying in for a while. We have strong support at the 50 and the 786 macro fib. And might we get another red candle? Sure. Let's actually go back to 2019. Let's take a look at those 30% sell-offs. When we got one, I won't count these because there weren't any really big red candles. Of course, this is a COVID crash, so we're not going to count that. But when we did get those big red candle sell-offs, what did we see the following week, guys? The following week, we saw another big fat red candle. Now, who knows if it's going to be different this time, but I would wait and see what next week holds, in my opinion. If next week is starting to look a little different on the candles, let's say it's got a higher base, then to me that'll look pretty good. But if it's another fat red candle going lower and the overall price is going lower too, then maybe we're due for one more dump down to that 44 range. But do watch. I'm not saying that will happen. All because it happened in 2019 doesn't mean it has to happen now. But do watch for that. And do watch to see if the RSI is leveled out here and starts to come back up. Because if so, we have bullish divergence. Let's go back to the Bitcoin rainbow chart. And then I'm going to show you two other indicators to watch for in the meantime. So we have deep value here. Earlier I mentioned with rate cuts, if we are to have a bad recession, that isn't necessarily imminent. And after rate cuts, we tend to still go up for a few months after. And 3 to 4 months, you can kind of confirm if we continue up or not. Let's take a look at later December, early January of this year. Some possible price targets. If we continue to go up, even for a few months after the first rate cuts, then I'd say conservatively, you can see how we've been in red, orange, orange. Conservatively, if we're in the orange area, let's get this, there we go. That third box down, we might get to 150K Bitcoin. The yellow orange box, the low 100Ks to 150K Bitcoin. That is my base case for where the next crypto top would be. And it also lines up with the macro fib extension. Now, when you take your fib and you're looking for price targets above it, make sure it's off log scale. And then you can see right here, the 1618 is at around the low 100s. The 2618 is at around 150. By the way, this would be around 3 trillion market cap for Bitcoin, which is close to where Nvidia, Apple, Microsoft is. So I would be watching for that. But do know if we are to get bullish just right after rate cuts, if that's when the market peak is going to be, and I don't know if it is, but guys, I'm just trying to present both outlooks and scenarios to you, and then you can choose which way you want to believe. If it's too risky for you, then hey, look at stocks and monitor that. But if you do believe that we have a cycle top coming soon by the end of this year, and I'm starting to lean that way, me personally, I'm leaning that way because we do have this bullish flag. We are honoring this channel, and I think eventually once it does break out, it's going to be quick. And actually, this is a good segue into the last things I want to talk about, and that is Bitcoin dominance and Tether dominance. Now, Bitcoin dominance, we've been talking about this for a while. We have these trend lines. Actually, we can take that off for now. And I'm going to add back on the buy sell signal indicator. We have these trend lines from the 2018 or 2017 cycle. It's coming down, and we've just touched it. And then this other trend line here, which hit the base of the alt season or the of the cycle in 2021. Alt season was here. These trend lines converged around 58%. And on this dump, what did we just touch? We touched 58%. We got right up to it. I want to say even on the smaller time frames, I was looking at, like it was showing, yeah, right here, you can see it got right up to 58% and it started to fall. So sometimes you got to zoom in on the smaller time frames. But this convergence or confluence, whatever you want to call it, has been my base case for where Bitcoin dominance needs to get to. Now, what is Bitcoin dominance, you might ask, if you're new to this? That is the overall percent of money in the crypto market that's in Bitcoin. So 50%, 57%, 58% is in Bitcoin. Why is that important? Well, at least the last two cycles, let's actually take a look at this on the weekly. When Bitcoin dominance tanks, and this was at the end of 2017, that signaled the top. For 1 month, dominance tanked, and that's when altcoins flew. That was the true alt season. In 2021, dominance tanked for about a month and a half. May 10th, you can see the data at the bottom. That was really when it started to turn around. So I'm watching this low 40 percentile like a hawk. Any altcoins I have, this is my personal plan, not financial advice for you. But let's say dominance gets up here somewhere 58 to 60%, and then near the end of the year, let's say this happens. I'm not saying it will, but let's pretend. If all of a sudden it starts to tank down to the low 40s, me personally, I'm taking my altcoin profits, I'm getting out. That is probably what I'm doing. Now, if there's any alts that I have money into where they haven't really done anything, then maybe I'll leave it in. Because in 2021, we did get that second spike. Actually, it's more here in November. We got the second spike, and then there were alts that ran back here. And so that is possible. You can see it on the rainbow chart. Is it possible we get two spikes, maybe one in November, one in January? Sure. I don't know what's going to happen. And that's something to be prepared for. But myself personally, if any of my altcoins, if Bitcoin dominance is the tank like it's done the last two times, and some of my altcoins are going 5, 10, 20x, I am pulling profits. And I am taking my money and leaving. So just something for you guys to be aware of. I know it can be painful seeing the 30% drawdown, but money is rolling over from Bitcoin or from altcoins to Bitcoin. That's what this dominance shows us. The other thing you have to consider, and I try to challenge my perspective constantly, but one thing I can't help but notice here with Bitcoin dominance, if this was a stock, and I've seen stocks like Microsoft do this, that is just slowly grinding up and only coming back to the 20-week moving average, those stocks are some of the best to own. They are the best to own. And typically what happens is after they ride the 20-week moving average, also they'll get a big shot up. Okay? There are no signs that dominance is looking bearish yet. And so until it does, it's possible that we might encounter more of what we just went through with Bitcoin. That is possible. Now, this is my base case. Maybe we'll come back down, grind a little bit, get another one sometime around September and rate cuts, and then that'll be the top around 60. I don't know. But that is my base case and something to watch for, guys. This does look bullish to me. The other thing that looks bullish to me, and we're going to finish by looking at this chart, is the Tether Dominance. Now, I was playing around with this. I was like, I'll draw a fib from the prior high to the low. Let's see what's happening on the weekly. And on the weekly, you can see that it got up to the 0.5. From how high it was, how low it came, it retraced all the way back to the 0.5. You see that right there. Now, the candle body, we moved above this fib line, the 236 to the 382, right? Am I remembering those? Yep, the 236 to the 382. But there was that wick to the 0.5. For you guys that have been watching these videos, you remember when I drew these horrible squiggly lines. As I was thinking, I'm like, if this was a stock, I would say this is bullish. And we looked at this. We're like, well, this is green. So technically, if Tether Dominance is bullish, then you know what's bearish? Bitcoin, crypto. And sure, it may pull back a little. And that'll be on the smaller time frames bullish for Bitcoin. But as long as we keep making higher highs and higher lows here on Tether Dominance and bouncing above or off of the 20-week moving average on Bitcoin Dominance, sorry, that's my cat's automatic feeder going off. You gotta love it. As long as we keep going up here on both those, that's not great for Bitcoin. We want to see a reversal of the trend. Now, this 0.5, it's curious to me because we have a lot of price action back here that the fib was being treated as support. But once it broke through, things got bullish. And so I wonder if the 0.5 is now going to be resistance. And then maybe we finish down here. I'm gonna alter this. Let's take a look at, you see how we're making higher highs and higher lows now? Then maybe we do something like this. This is going to be my new base case. Okay, this is how I'm altering my perspective here. Is that we had this spike, maybe we come down, Bitcoin's a little bullish, we get one more, and then we come down. I want to see if this plays out. If we are going to top later this year, and we're going to get bearish, 3 to 4 months after rate cuts, which tends to be the case when there is a recession. And I am believing with more signs on the wall. You can watch my stock videos. There's more signals coming out to say that's probably what's going to happen. But I don't want the recession stuff to freak you guys out too much, because what tends to happen is before markets dump, they do rip. And you don't want to miss out on those profits. And if you are in crypto and you do have money in altcoins, then what you are waiting for is for dominance to tank and to get profits from altcoins. If you are in crypto and that's your number one thing that you're watching for, then we have not had that happen yet. And if you're still finding values in your alts, now is the time to possibly get ready, because we've hit this confluence on the Bitcoin dominance chart. So that's what I'm eyeing here. That 100K to 150K mark, that really hasn't changed, guys. It's right around these two orange lines. And should things get bearish in the meantime, or continue to be bearish, you can see here on the rainbow chart how we're going down. If that's happened for a while and we're going to be bearish for another year and a half and maybe get a later cycle top somewhere, 4-year cycle or early 2026, something like that, we'll cross that bridge when we get there, if that's what the market will show us. But until then, until dominance tanks or we get well invalidated out of this bull flag, then we got to take what the price action's given us. And right now, we're base case, we're selling this bull flag. And yes, we came down to the lower end, but again, here in Market Psychology 101, we're looking for value when there's fear. We have extreme fear right now. If you have a plan, and I hope you do, go and look for some possible deals. It may go lower, may go higher, but this is a much better opportunity for altcoins than here and here and here and here. This is one of the best opportunities for altcoins we have right now. Even if it goes lower, I like this area for dollar cost averaging. Not financial advice. Guys, thank you for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful week. Take care.